Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Poz, with two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. TrumpMania, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm not sure if the TrumpMania acronym has been as relevant today as it's been in the last few years, of course. For those that don't know, John and I first worked together formally on the acclaimed 13 episode podcast run of TrumpMania, which led directly into this podcast. I think we took a couple of weeks off. But really a fascinating time period through the lens of pro wrestling. I feel like maybe even Trump and Biden, did that double turn where you have, depending on somebody's perspective, of course, where you have Biden, lose the debate badly, seem confused. There's all this dissension in his party, and Trump not only won the debate clearly, but he survived death and he raised his arm and it led directly into the Republican National Convention. Like, can you write a better script than that?
Man, that was very pro wrestling esque, just as far as like how everything kind of strategically got laid out. But yeah, won't get into too much of the controversies, if you will, or the conspiracy theories that somehow the other side is now believing in conspiracy theories, which is nuts to read and see. But Trump Mania may need to make a return now. I feel like Trump Mania is maybe stronger than ever. It's crazy. Fight, fight, fight.
And one lighter point about it, I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, John, but Tim Scott's speech at the RNC on day one, it was very pro wrestling esque. I wrote about it in the book when Linda McMahon was confirmed for the Small Business Administration. Scott, clearly being from the Carolinas, being a fan, he was asking questions sort of in an awkward way, sort of like to drop his pro wrestling knowledge. And at the convention, he was doing the Hogan ear cupping and like it was like very pro wrestling. So that's
Yeah.
our Trump Mania talk for tonight.
Yes. Now, possibly even bigger news. I know that's Trump news, obviously big, but maybe bigger news around these parks. What is going on with Masked Republic? Because Kevin kind of teased us something is going on. Something huge is hitting for Masked Republic.
And we have an outstanding commitment. Kevin, who's listening, will join us at some point when he can, when our schedules align. He's on the West Coast, we're on the East Coast, so different obligations and so on at different time periods. But it actually ended up being very thematic this week. We'll get into the other parts of the theme this week, but whether it's representation companies or Mass Republic does so many things, it's hard to like put them in a box, but they're going to a venue and starting something new that's in a bigger venue, and some other promotions are as well. So we'll get into some of those later, but Mass Republic announced the first edition of Masked Mania. It'll be Los Parks versus Los Piratas. Sorry for those that pronounce things better, but Tien Blas Jr., Alush, and DMT Azul at the Bert Ogden Arena on Saturday, September 7th. So some more details about this. Now, Ogden Arena, those listening may already be familiar with it. It's a mid-sized arena. It seats just under 7,700 at full capacity. Now, AEW ran it in the beginning of this year, in 2024. They set it up for just over 3,300 and did a little bit less than that. And there was also a Saturday night's main event run by WWE, which did about 5,500 with a 6,300 setup. So basic, probably maxed out with I'm not sure what type of staging they use for Saturday night's main event. So a mid-major arena, I guess, is the best way to define it, and sort of starting out hot when you are using an arena both not only AEW uses but WWE as well. So just to refer to the press release that came out on the day we're recording this. For nearly 100 years, the sports cultural performance hybrid has been delighting fans in Mexico, Lucha Libre, of course. referencing mid-1990s, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, L.A. Park. While events featuring luchadors and lucha matches take place in small venues throughout the U.S. nearly every weekend, attending an authentic Mexico arena event experience, that's in quotes, has not yet been available to fans in the U.S. Masked Republic, industry leader in expanding lucha libre beyond the borders of Mexico, has been producing live event experiences for more than a decade now. From 9 sold-out Viva La Lucha shows in Southern California's Agua Calientes Casino to Expo Lucha in Vegas, San Diego, and Philadelphia, the company is always looking for ways to get fans more up close and personal with the biggest icons. Now, when MaskMania lands in Edinburgh, Texas this September, the company will bring its more than just matches style of must-attend events to the arena for the very first time. One of our goals of Masked Republic has been to bring the most authentic lucha experience to fans outside Mexico, said Ruben Zamora, the CEO. This means more than just matches. We want to bring the sounds, sights, and smells. The excitement doesn't start when the bell rings for the first time. It begins when you arrive at the venue. Music is playing, vendors are hawking masks, t-shirts, and favorite treats. The same superstar luchadors you see on TV are accessible to you and your family as you walk up and purchase a mask directly from them. That is what an authentic lucha libre experience is about. The Ogden Arena the experience will be headlined by a double main event, like we mentioned. We'll also have Hoovy, Lince Dorado, and so on. So ticket prices are not yet available. There's a premium type experience, and then VIP experience, and then a regular experience as well. One of the things to keep in mind is, of course, I'm not sure how far Edinburgh is from the border, if it's considered a border town or something like that. But if fans of Lucha Libre have been in Mexico before, they're used to certain prices. So that's something that may play a factor, something interesting to follow. Also very interesting is the organization attached to it, United Talent Agency. Burt Ogden Arena is honored to have been chosen by Masked Republic and UTA to present the inaugural MaskMania event. This is the person that runs the venue. So let's get a little bit more into United Talent Agency, because the person attached to this usually he's a music agent, according to LinkedIn. His name is Joe Wolfeld of United Talent Agency, one of the biggest agencies in the world. And before that, he was with William Morris Endeavor, which we're all familiar with as well. So he's been a professional in the field for 10 years. So it appears that UTA is looking to get more into the live events business. In a search, I came across a concept that they had called Wheel of Fortune Live. So this would be not taping shows for syndication for Wheel of Fortune, but people that want to experience Wheel of Fortune, like to go, like if you can't go to California or a soundstage to see it, that you get part of that experience. And you can also sign up and have a few people actually get called to the wheel, that sort of thing. Just a little bit more on UTA's current pursuits. UTA Music is at the forefront of culture with a client roster that ranges from timeless icons to rising hit makers. Its full service representation maximizes opportunities not only in music, but across television, film, video games, digital, publishing, fashion, and so on. So really interesting opportunity for Masked Republic, just looking at the way Wheel of Fortune had rolled out 40 cities and so on when they did it in 2022. I'd imagine that this is the first of potentially many shows. You know, you have all of this branding and so on. Again, it's an ambitious undertaking. It's a semi-major arena. So maybe we have to see how this goes. And if it goes well, then they'll continue to expand. So I've often thought about it where sort of rather than just having talent, of course, just, you know, send some talent to MLW, some talent to TNA, AEW, of course, but like really have that authentic type of experience where maybe it would be like Cirque du Soleil type, where you have it like be a premium event. You go, you tour in cities, you hit it once or twice a year, and maximize the experience there. Of course, Masked Republic has so many relationships, not only with promotions, but with the talent themselves, that they can kind of consider like well, obviously they create their own brand, but like, is it best that how can we support like a AAA or CMLL from doing this, or maybe we can do our own thing with some of the names that are already well known and build that up that way.
Now, as far as TNA is concerned, it seems like they've got some huge news and a possible 4,000 seat sellout. Huge news for TNA.
Yeah, so in Verdun, in of course Montreal, Quebec, Slammiversary is now sold out. It's been something everyone's had their eye on for a while. For a while, it said um, tickets were unavailable. I didn't see that sold out sign on Eventbrite. So I was like, let's just hold off everyone. And then the next day we saw sold out. Now, I imagine they have like at least a modest setup. So I don't know if it'll be the full 4,000 or maybe a little bit over 4,000. But now people are attributing this to a number of things. They're like, well, they're working with WWE. And they're like, look, now they sold out, which I don't think is the case because they were already like when they had the more modest sellout, set up that sold out pretty quickly or moved very quickly. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it's necessarily the team that replaced Scott D'Amore, although I don't know what D'Amore had in motion, but I've been really impressed with like their community engagement. But to me, and we were talking about this, John, as soon as the state was on the books, that with a PCO and once I had confirmed you were already confident of it that Speedball Mike Bailey was French Canadian.
Yep.
That if they promoted them well and they were in matches of significance, that would do really well. So that's what I attribute it to. What do you think about that, John?
I think it has more to do with like PCO. I feel like he really got out there, the burger thing. You know what I mean? He really old school style was getting out there and stepping on the pavement and really pedal to the metal. I feel like that's the reason for the style. Not so much WB, just because they were already almost sold out as it was. Mike Bailey probably definitely helps too, to get to the French Canadians there. But I feel like, I don't know, I got to give PCO most of, if not all, the credit.
100%. I think I was being kind. Nothing wrong with Mike Bailey, but PCO. And PCO has the history of it. I know not every time that he's main invented the forum has it been gangbusters. I was just, I got some of the old Observer yearbooks, like where they've made them into hardcovers and they've sort of done it thematic. I'm not sure if you've gotten any of those yet, John.
A couple of them, I have them. Yep.
Yeah. What's funny about it, not to go on a tangent, is that they kept in the typos. Right, the Observer is known for like being terrible with typos. So like it had New Jack, NEWJACK, and then it had like the next sentence NUJACK. So just an aside, but in there I was reminded of, right, because I always thought about like PCO, right, when he went against
Jacques.
Jacques Rougeau, and so on. But when he challenged for the title with Nash, which ended up being disaster, I think it was only 7,000 in the building, which was good for that dark period. But like it wasn't always like gangbusters. But overall, he's been a great draw in Montreal. He has that history, and like when you're sort of like this old fighter, like even though George Foreman wasn't that old in retrospect when he won the belt again, when he made a comeback, I think he was only like 45 then. But he has that history and he's doing everything with the burgers and the the salty pretzels, and they have a banner and everything like that. However, the day after that they're taping is not doing very well. I actually thought it was doing better. Maybe that was because some of the tickets were being held for like, if you have like a special deal where you buy both tickets together. So maybe they were like hoping for that. But when I look at the last time I captured the map from Eventbrite, it's really only the first 2 or 3 rows that are kind of moved along, and even some of the second and third row is still there, and then you have some the front of like the bleachers and that sort of thing. So you have all of this, you have a show that's sold out. So can they move it like to be like, hey, hope you're enjoying your pretzel. By the way, it's anniversary, order it, it's sold out if you don't have a ticket. By the way, we're still here the next day to try and
Yeah.
move some of those tickets. So that'll be interesting to see if like some of that momentum carries over. So that's Montreal. Slammiversary, a big win. Obviously, the second day of a taping is always a tougher one. John, you were at the last second day taping, I guess, at this point, that actually ended up doing really well. And we talked about some of those reasons. But just looking at some of their other schedule, and again, like TNA fans are very passionate and so on, but like we're not seeing it. Okay, so you have Slammiversary. We're not seeing a huge turnaround in terms of live event business, though. So sorry, guys. In Tampa on August 2nd and 3rd, it's a modest sellout. Modest setup. I know everyone would love to hear sellout, but again, most of the second row is still available. Now in Louisville, Kentucky, of course, August. Okay, so now we don't have more tickets for sale to talk about because they're doing a really smart idea. Again, if this is part of the new promotions team or executives, kudos to you. I think it's a really smart idea. WWE does something like this too, which is they're having like a super on sale day. So tickets for Double Shot in Louisville, Double Shot in Cleveland, which includes Victory Road, and then Spartanburg on September 27th on September 27th. Those are like, and 28th. Those are super ticket days. And I think Winston-Salem is the one that they do at WrestleCade, unless I'm mixing something up. So it's a triple shot. But outside of the WrestleCade, the other shows will be like on those super ticket sales days. Now, one thing outside of that, which is interesting, and of course, we've had the pleasure of talking Memphis wrestling, the modern Memphis wrestling here before, but in terms of the signage that they're using, AJ Francis, the current TNA digital media champion, is facing Real One on an upcoming show for Enzo Amore for an upcoming show for there. So, John, I'm not sure if you saw this. Another aside, and I got like a respect for Enzo grew a lot. Where there's a video of a child that like was nonverbal, and his first words were like the Enzo like thing. I'm a certified G and so on. And he came to like a signing and he did it for Enzo. It was just like it just shows the the power to like cross over pro wrestling, like for all the negative stuff people talk about, it's just like a nice thing to see.
And it's crazy how many people always, even adults, like who's your hero growing up? And it was always a wrestler. So the power of wrestling is way more than people will admit sometimes, which is sad but true.
Yeah, and Tim Scott still repping it.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as GCW is concerned, Matt Cardona's got some interesting things to say the least.
Yeah, there's definitely like, and not that our former official business partner of the podcast deals in such things, but the what he was sharing through SE Scoops was like very like another website could take it and like really like go wild with the clickbait stuff, because some of it seemed a little bit far out there, but let me share what it is. So Cardona is proud to be part of GCW. He believes the company also deserves proverbial flowers with what the promotion created. Cardona named as one to watch with a bright future. So GCW's company, I feel I put on the map with that death match with Nick Gage. At the same time, they put me on the map with that death match with Nick Gage. The relationship has been mutually beneficial. That match changed my life and career. I owe so much to GCW. Agreed. Okay, so that I don't think GCW gets the credit it deserves. This company is truly an independent company run all over the world and every weekend. I think it's WWE and GCW. I don't think any other company runs as much or as consistently here as GCW runs. For WWE, I wouldn't be surprised if they do stuff with GCW. They're a kind of are with Bloodsport. Agreed. Okay, so the final thing, which is a little bit out, ECW did on Raw. Comes down to the ring at Raw, and Joey, Effie, Nick Gage, Steph Delander, and Mance Warner. Brett Lauderdale could be the new Heyman on commentary. I'm getting goosebumps. Talk about a perfect way for Matt Cardona to make his debut in GCW. You want to talk about moments? That's a moment. I don't think, like, everyone loves a crossover. I don't think, like, I think for Matt Cardona, like, his, he's well known, and when his wife comes out, people chant for him, even though she's doing an amazing job on standing on her own, of course. But I think it could come across as awkward, not sometimes having a group of people that are very different from what you see on television already is very interesting, and it would get some buzz. But I think they're already doing something with TNA right now. I don't think, like, the timing is right. I think that more natural, like, GCW working on Bloodsport and expanding there, because sometimes, like, this interpromotional stuff, like, yes, it started out hot with ECW, but I remember, like, it wasn't too long until they were putting on, like, Shotgun, like Rob Van Dam and Sabu going against, like, Road Dogg before he was over, like, when he was still, like, the roadie or whatever it was. Like, sometimes you could really kill a brand, and this is an outsider brand. Obviously, they have relationships everywhere, but, like, you have to be very careful in managing that.
True. What else is going on with GCW? They got a ton of shows coming up.
Yeah, so a lot. So just find, like, sort of give some perspective of what's upcoming, and then we have at least a domestic for most shows that are on sale. Sort of look at how tickets. So on July 18th in Louisville, July 19th in Sauget, which I think they consider St. Louis. On the 20th, so a triple shot in the Indianapolis. On the 28th, the long talked about Bloodsport, that'll be there. On August 2nd in Cleveland, August 4th in Asbury Park. Then there's the triple shot in Japan from August 12th to 14th. August 17th, back to LA. August 18th in Salt Lake. The homecoming shows, August 24th and 25th in Atlantic City. August 31st, back to Chicago. September 14th in Detroit. September 15th in Rochester. The 20th back in Harris in Philly. The 21st in Hartford. And then all the way long planned November 2nd in Honolulu. Okay, so let's get into some of the shows where tickets have been on sale. So first, starting out with a win. Louisville is sold out. There was a small, having looked at the ticket map, there was a small reserved sections in the venue, but most of it was general admission, but now that's all sold out. So now in Sauget, Illinois, and they have even in the image the St. Louis, like, arch. Third row has just one seat available, and then fourth row just 6 seats available. So again, as we talked about with Brett, that market, even though it's modest, it continues to show some strength and some improvement. In Indianapolis is another story. In the second row, you could still get 10 tickets as well as the 10 tickets or potentially more. Third row, same story. Now, Cleveland, I just realized this myself. Is this SummerSlam weekend? Is that the beginning of August, or that's...
Yeah, SummerSlam is August 3rd, I want to say. Yeah.
Okay, so got it. Okay, so I didn't put that together till recently. So they're going against SmackDown in the running Temple Live Cleveland. So that's interesting. Like, usually they try and, like, run late or something like that, but it might depend on the venue and taking a risk. So since this is a venue that's run by different independents, even though it's larger, over 1,000 seats and like kind of a classier venue, it's probably not extraordinarily expensive, I would speculate. Um, just 31 tickets distributed, just 27 tickets moved in the last 7 days. So just a couple weeks to make it happen. Now they added a potential draw, I guess. I'm not sure what the reception is anymore. Maybe it depends on the type of show, the type of fans you're aiming towards. But Matt Hardy will be on the show. Then in your neck of the woods, Asbury Park, New Jersey, there's I'm not sure if it's always been just general admission tickets, but general admission tickets are what are on sale now. You could get, of course, 10 or more potentially. LA was just I think they've set up several more rows in the past, so they might update that soon. But just at the moment, having three reserve rows and stage seating, I think is 4 rows on the stage. General admission tickets are what remains, so 10 or potentially more. Then as we move along in Salt Lake, August 18th, slow at the moment, but more than a month to go. So that's something just to keep an eye on. But there's still plenty of second row tickets available, I think, in their debut in the city. If not their debut, maybe their second show. Atlantic City has on the first night, third row still available. Or actually, sorry, second row even still available. So I haven't felt like the buzz as much for the end of the summer Atlantic City shows. In Chicago, the front row is sold out, but then based on their ticket map, 6 or more potential seats are available in all of the different rows. This venue only allows you to click through to 6 for each section.
So what's going on in New Japan Pro Wrestling right now?
So the Fantastic Mania show with CMLL, probably more notable for who wasn't there. I'm just looking at the ticket map. The main seats, most of them were gone. Some of the seats on the side were still available. It was just a several hundred seat setup, maybe with bleachers as well. Based on the ticket prices, depending on the amount of talent that was used and the cost and whatever. And the overall gate, I think, was probably good because it was an expensive show. We'll know more if they do more domestic shows in the US. Again, it was like a little bit, everyone was praising how they dressed it up nicely and so on, but a little bit low rent to use a high school gym when it's 2 major promotions and you are charging high ticket prices. But hey, if they save money and they were able to charge these prices and they did pretty well, maybe it's not the worst idea. Washington, D.C., I don't have on August 30th, I don't have an updated ticket number. I know 1,000 tickets were sold as of July 9th, so a week ago as we record this. They had been moving just 26 tickets in 7 days the week before, but they're starting to announce more talent and involvement. I think Ishii I had seen after I got my notes, but of course, Tanahashi will be there as well. So first we need to know the stars, then we need to know the matches, but time is moving along.
What about MLW? Because they have a bit of a streak going on, don't they? A little bit of a sellout streak?
Yes. Sometimes I feel like it depends on how you set it up, but from the pictures that I've seen, it looks like they're doing quite well. Thank you, St. Petersburg and Tampa, for keeping our 2024 sellout streak going. Yeah, when I looked at the map just prior to the show beginning, or actually, I think the map was still open as the show was beginning before they moved to the south. There's just a dotting of seats, so a sellout there. I grabbed 3 days later how many people watched this because it was not a premium event pay-per-view. It was just streamed in full on YouTube. Sorry, a cough, not a laugh. 80,000 views there. What do we have upcoming in New York? This show is at the at the end of August? Yeah, at the end of August, so sometime. it's a smaller venue in Queens that they regularly use, but there's still some front row tickets available. Just based on the size of it, it'll probably be another sellout if not close. What's slow is Atlanta still for September 14th. Last time they had just a very modest reserves around the ring, and then the rest was considered GA. They sold that out, potentially due to Lucha interest, but this time most of the tickets remain. MLW Slaughterhouse in October. That's just recently gone on sale. Most of the front row gone, some of the second row, a little bit of dotting here and there. So we'll see what happens. And November 9th in Lucha Apocalypto has, let's see how that's doing. Still some front row tickets available, but other places, some of the tickets sold. So not tremendous, but moving along. And I think they're pointed in the right direction in terms of the type of venues that they're selecting at the moment.
What about WoW? What's going on with the Women of Wrestling?
So last week we talked about the return of season 3 and their multi-day tapings and so on, but they will be at the San Diego Comic-Con. It seems like something that they enjoy, being at these type of tentpole pop culture events, which I think is a good idea. Special panel session featuring WoW co-owners Jeannie Buss and David McLean, of course, along with superheroes Coach Campanelli and Genesis on Friday, July 26th. For the first time, WoW will present a special panel at the con. Let's see if there's any other context. The influence of comics on pro wrestling and a preview of season 3. So there we go. The importance of representation. So that's something that they're a little bit heavy-handed with. Sometimes you see a little bit of from inside the house and then from outside the house, like just talents expressing how they feel they were treated and so on. And it hasn't been, a huge number, but sometimes when you're very heavy-handed with representation of women and so on, you just have to make sure that what you're talking about, like that your company follows the same values. Not saying that they don't, but whenever we hear different reports, like from the twins of issues that they've had, it's just something to think about.
Now, as far as the NWA, they've got a lot going on, including a 76th anniversary coming up.
Yes, so sometimes it gets a little bit confusing about like what's what and who's who, because of course they've built out their territories. But July 19th in Nashville, this is the Joe Kazana NWA Southeast show. In the NWA is teaming, or actually this occurred already, but I didn't hear anything additional about it. Wrestling megastars NWA La Notte del Campione. On the 7th of July, the NWA title was defended. Of course, NWA 76, 2300 Arena. So not too much buzz about that. Looks like the first row is gone, depending on where. Some of the second row and a little bit of seats there. I think it would be great. I may have mentioned this before, like if Shane Douglas came by, maybe like give it like a reverse endorsement. Not necessarily take the belt off the mat and sort of give it to Billy Corgan, but something sort of like endorse like how strong he is. I guess it's a hard thing to pull off where you don't want to make it just seem that you were paid to be there and such a thing. But John, maybe you can work the phones and see if we can get an exclusive from Shane Douglas if he's heard anything about it.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be good. What is going on right now with OVW, by the way?
So OVW. So this okay, so first I just want to give context to this topic. And like I mentioned, starting out with our first news bit from Mass Republic, it's something like I've been thinking about for a while. I think we've talked about it a little bit before on the show. So WWE, as Brandon talked about last week on WrestleNomics, that there's very few super shows or house shows now as compared, of course, as compared to Raw, SmackDown, and premium live events. Um, it's almost like, and you look at these like super shows where, it's 4,000 people and like, wherever it is in Florida, wherever they end up running these shows, outside of like the holiday weeks and like special opportunities, it just doesn't seem like it's worth WWE's while as much anymore. And AEW, we heard talk of like, I don't know if they're still doing this, but like trying to bring up their attendance by not going to as many small towns, but focusing on the bigger towns. I think that they're more open now than maybe that talk a few months ago, but they're obviously not in the position to do house shows. So the question is, like, if you were to look at a map and look at like where WWE and AEW are running, have run shows in the last 18 months, and then where they're planning to run, as far as we know, in the next 6 months or whatever, like those markets where there's not a show in that metropolitan area or within, let's say, like 45 miles, can some of these promotions that are more established, like, do business by bringing, like, if you're in the community having like a quarterly show or a semi-annual, like twice a year show, where you bring in stars to supplement it and you utilize the goodwill you already have in the community and the media context to sort of like pop a house. So not necessarily that they're all thinking about it in this way, but we're starting to see more of that. So Mass Republic is its own thing, but when we look at OVW, they announced the show August 31st at the Appalachian Wireless Arena in Pikeville, Kentucky. So I'm not sure how close that is to Louisville. I think that's like a little bit outside of that area, maybe closer to the Smoky territory. And someone correct me if my geography is off. But that's not what surprised me. At first, I was like really impressed with the idea because I was looking at the if you wanted to book the venue, and these smaller venues generally have like a PDF where you can see what the setups look like. So they actually have a curtain system for this venue that can hold up to 7,000. A quarter house is 1,500. Don't say the math is off. This is the numbers that they give. I know 1,500 isn't a quarter of 7,000. Quarter house 1,500, half house 2,500 to 3,500. So they're using the term as it works for them. And a full house is 5,500 to 7,000. So, John, I'm sure you already saw the notes, but without cheating, if you were to think about OVW being a little bit more ambitious and booking a venue like this, and you were to have the options of a quarter, a half, and a full, which one would you pick?
Well, I would just do the quarter house, just because I don't know like exactly what they're going to draw. There's no like history of like, oh, they drew this in this town. You know what I mean? Like as far as that big of a venue, so I would just do the smallest one, the quarter.
Right. And what did they pick? The full. So, uh, thankfully, WrestleTix, I tagged them right away, and they got that full count. And they had a count already of like 334 tickets that are off the map. To me, I don't consider most of those sold yet, because you could even see the patterns in like the upper, like the first upper tier, or at least the raised seating, which doesn't look like they've moved. There's been a few tickets that have moved around the ringside. So I'm just guessing here. And our listeners from OVW, let me know if I'm off. But I would say like in the tens to maybe a little bit over 100 tickets moved, if that. But I think it's still rolling out. Like for ticket sales, when they announced it, they pointed you to the OVW website, and it wasn't yet there, and I had to search around for it and so on. If you're determined, you'll find it, but you don't want somebody to have to be determined. And they're bringing in like Kevin Nash like as a guest, and Boogeyman. I'm not, he's just a guest or he'll wrestle, but they're sort of increasing it. But I would say like even to do like potentially like to try a half house. But I don't understand like why you would open up the whole thing. Maybe it's easy. I don't imagine it would be easy logistically to like to then move. If somebody random like picks the cheapest ticket in the upper deck, they won't mind moving down to the quarter house just like 10 rows up. but you have to like figure out where to move them and so on. So maybe it's hard, like if you do it in reverse, like let's say the quarter does really well, then to move it to a half, maybe it's harder to do. I'm not sure, but that seems overly ambitious. So that's the OVW part. Prestige Wrestling, who just had their Combat Clash PDX show, I think they did it right. They ran a venue in their market that's a few thousand deep. It wasn't a sellout, but it looks like it did well, especially like the lower section of the venue appears to have most of its tickets gone and then some dotting around. So we'll know if they return to something like this, but they had 25,000 views after 3 days for their YouTube showing. So that's an easy comparison point to MLW because they both aired Friday night around the same time. Combat Clash, of course, in Pacific time. Then, just staying along this theme, Limitless Wrestling, which we've talked about, August 17th, they'll be at the Coliseum Lewiston, and we'll see if that momentum builds up. It looks like in the spaces around, the ring, they're about 4 rows deep, and then when you go to the risers, they're like maybe into the second row, they've sold some tickets, so there's still some room to sell plenty of tickets, even with a half house sell up. But I think it's worth it. So, but John, like, what do you think about like the overall concept, like that there's certain fans that aren't being served, and maybe you can put a little bit more into it? I mean, I know that when WWE stopped running so much in the Northeast, people would try to run, Allentown with like, the Offense Seeker and so on, and like Sergeant Slaughter, but like I don't feel like it really took off. But there's certainly a place like where we see it best, like minor league baseball, right? There's not a major league team, or even in the same metropolitan area, if it's not directly where you are, you could do well and you could find a niche. So I don't know if that, like where we are in pro wrestling, like if there's that possibility now.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like more and more shows, and they think that they're that there's more fans maybe than there are. It's to me, I don't. It's a crapshoot out there. I don't know if there's that many wrestling fans. I wish there was, but I don't know if there really is.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like, especially with WWE, it's sort of like I'm a fan of WWE. So you'd have to have someone that like is just off television or it's just well known. Like if you're a family of 4 and like all into it, or 3 out of 4 of you are into it, or whatever it is, like where they'd be like, oh, I recognize that name and so on, where it has to like have that appeal, but just pro wrestling would be like harder to draw. So I think like if you're scaling up to a venue and trying like 2 or 3,000 seats, especially something like a vacation town that peaks in this end of the summer, or whatever it is, like maybe you want to spend on like bringing in 2 or 3 pieces of outside talent whose name carries over further than your, general bookings.
Yeah. Yep. So what's going on with Prestige Wrestling?
So those were the 3 points in related to OVW, Prestige, and Limitless. So we can move on to the other.
Okay. What is going on with WPW? Little
Yeah,
Winnipeg.
so this is something I've been, trying to learn more about, just because they seem to do well every year at this Rumble in the Burt show. So 1,300 seat venue, talking about expansive venues, but when I talk about the previous topic, I'm thinking like booking like 2,000 seat, 3,000 seat, and so on venue. But 1,300, there's just 400 tickets remaining, and this show doesn't take place till October, so they're doing great. They have booked Donovan Dijak and Mustafa Ali for the show, along with who I assume are their regular talents: Tyler Colton, Voyager Cup winner James Roth, Vanna Black, Mo Jabari, who I think wrestles for Stampede also, Jody Thread, who a lot of us are familiar with. Then next, Reality of Wrestling. in their own venue, which I love the name again, sponsored by a lawyer. Walker Texas Lawyer Arena is a 7th standing room only show. First Wrestling at the mall. We talked about them expanding their capacity. VIP is sold out. GA level 1 is sold out. Level 2 is less than 15 standing room. Level 3 of the mall less than 100, and level 4 less than 50. I think we should keep what's his name, Cody Hawk, the father
Yep.
and son that somebody jumped over a railing once at a
Luke Hawk.
venue. Luke Hawk. Keep him far away from the Mall of America. We want him to be in good health.
Yes. Now, as far as ROW, any more news with Booker and like WWE? Obviously works for WWE, but as far as using NXT talent on ROW?
That's a good question. I feel like every once in a while it pops up, especially with talent that that's passed through, that he's trained. The former, is she the current women's NXT champion?
Roxanne, yep.
Roxanne. So yeah, so that relationship is there, and I think that's a good one and something to to play off of. But I have one more point for this evening, an interesting article, which is Bayou Independent Wrestling uses nostalgic old school booking to entertain audiences. Um, Josh Newell is in the business of tugging on heartstrings. Most of the time, he has his hand at the wheel, driving his audience to feel anger, joy, sadness, confusion, or amusement. Sounds like Inside Out too. But sometimes the brilliance of pro wrestling resonates when audiences feel those emotions in an organic way. And that's what hooked Newell long before he got into promotion business. At the Bayou Independent Wrestling Promoter, Newell meets people from all walks of life. The wrestling product that he puts on, approximately 12 shows a year, has gifted him with unforgettable conversation outside the ring, such as a widow making a BIW show to reconnect with a passion, with her late husband. Wrestling is beautiful, Noel said. The stories are endless, inside and outside the ring, from the drama that's first constructed with a pencil to the execution by the professionals in the ring. Because of the scripted aspect, because this scripted aspect of wrestling, we're messing with these emotions. With football and other sports, it's just one emotion. Wrestling brings out a different side. Ask 100 people what professional wrestling is, and you just might get 100 different answers. Some might use the dreaded fake word. Wrestlers take offense. Perhaps the best local example that can be found is Cassie Riley's retirement. The West Monroe native wrestled in 4 different decades before having his final wrestling match in Bayou's Hot Shot Forever event at West Monroe Convention Center. Riley, who wrestled the independent on mainstream television in TNA, WCW, and WWE, no disrespect to Riley, I just don't recognize the name, defeated his former tag team partner Chase Stevens in his own backyard to call it a career. So this is a nice deep article about a local promotion and a promoter's passion for it. And it looks like they've drawn about 400 people regularly to their shows.
Nice. Love that. I wonder, just as far as going back to ROW for a second, I just wonder, like the power of WWE, kind of going back to what we said in the beginning with TNA. Is it really helping out? Like, is it really helping out Marigold? I want to think yes, but I don't know. Would you think that it's helping out as much as people think? Like they're giving them credit for the sellout, even though they were kind of already sold out before. Do you think, as far as ROW and all these other places, that WWE should be getting, the credit, and even
Yeah.
AJ Styles and Noah?
So great question. I think it's really like market by market and depends on the promotion. I think for a promotion like Ring of or Reality of Wrestling, excuse me, Booker T is mainstream. What he's aiming towards is mainstream. So like having that connection with WWE and being able to bring in talent that's on television is gold. Like that's key, not only to selling tickets, but whenever promotions are tied into training centers, that tends to be like the lifeblood of things, from my understanding. So for Booker to remain in good standing with WWE and bring in talent occasionally, is huge. So for him, that's great. With Japan, it's a little bit harder to suss out in the market, and for me, that's why I love to bring in the type of experts that we've had on Japan. For Marigold, though, it seems important to them to establish themselves, to have that access and be able to utilize that more. For Noah, I think just like having that relationship with WWE is important and helpful. For TNA, I think yes, it's been helpful for sure. I think it's thus far, with Joe Henry's breaking out, having nothing to do with pro wrestling in itself, right? Like for his music and whatever it may be, but nothing to do with wrestling, but like concurrent with wrestling. And Jordan Grace, like to have them cross over into WWE just makes TNA seem bigger, as long as it just doesn't become like too regular. And you have to sort of protect that as well. Like Jordan Grace's contract is coming up, I think at the beginning of the next year, from what I understand. So she might be moving on to WWE. So if it's just like you're just going to be sending talents that will go to the next step, like, and it's just a stepping stone, I'm not sure how much it helps. But thinking about like things flowing the other way, thus far it's exciting to have like WWE talent show up till it's regular. Even in GCW and in Bloodsport, it just adds something to it. So I guess the overall answer is like, you have to know who you are as a brand. It will only prop you up so long, and you have to use it in a way that like not that old school thing where like your talent always has to get the win against the WWE talent, but like sort of like think about like where will you be tomorrow, right? Like with Smoky, I guess the best example is Smoky Mountain Wrestling. As they needed help, the Undertaker would come in, Shawn Michaels would come in, and so on. But like, what about when they return the next week to the same town? It's just harder to draw. And again, I was reading the Observer 1993 yearbook, like the houses that they did with USWA at the beginning, like especially like in Louisville, like I was shocked because I kind of thought about USWA as being like really down already by that point, but like they were really good houses for like a difficult time in the market everywhere. But then when it became more regular, it didn't even draw on, like even sending like Randy Savage to rematch Jerry Lawler in Mid South, which was like a legendary feud. Like relatively, it didn't even do that big a house. So like you have to have that balance and sort of like not hot shot and have that long term thinking. But for WWE, I think it's a smart thing as long as you're not creating your own competitors, which no one is close to being that now, where you can like rent out the talent sort of like as a booking agency and like maximize revenue there, especially if you're not running as many shows as you did and the talent are healthy and ready to work more than like 2 or 3 times a week. If there's like a plus one and it makes sense to send them abroad or even uh, locally for the right type of show.
Well said indeed. Now, as far as this week, let's wrap it up and head towards the plugs. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Lavie, what do you got going on?
So I guess I'll plug it for the first time in a while. TrumpMania, 2 print editions. There's also an audio edition of the 2020 election special, which was really fun to listen to. So check that out on Amazon. Check out our LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business, ever growing, including job listings. Follow me on X at Lavie Marg, Lavie Marg, and hopefully next time we record, it'll be a lot cooler out.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.